Welcome to the Dash Mindset Podcast. I'm Sherry Zievenbergen. You were born, you're gonna die, and your adventure is your dash in between. So make the most of it. Unlock your potential in all aspects of your dash by embracing your uniqueness and living in a way that's authentic to you, not by doing more things, but by focusing on the right things. I'm a former corporate leader turned coach who's on my own journey, and I'm passionate about helping you on your journey too. So on the podcast, we'll explore how to live authentically by deciphering who you truly are and what you truly want. Are you ready to take a step toward designing your dash? Someday doesn't actually exist, so let's do it now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dash Mindset Podcast again. Today, I have my friend Lance McDonald here, and I'm super excited to have Lance because for a number of reasons, not just because he's really funny and he's a super nice guy, but because I'm really interested in him sharing his story about the path he's taken through life, because he didn't stay on the path he was initially on for a lot of reasons. So I want him to walk us through that today, which he agreed to do. He's the founder of Lexington Capital LLC. He's an investment advisor. That's what he does now. But his path started out when he graduated in youth ministry with his Bachelor in Science. So clearly different than he had initially planned. So Lance and I met, we were in a leadership program together when we were in our corporate days, and we've been friends ever since, and he's just a blast, even as an investment advisor. So thank you so much for being here, Lance. I will let you take it from here and just tell us about what you do and what your journey was.
My journey, yeah. Let's start back even before youth ministry. And in high school, junior high, I decided I wanted to be a pilot. I started flight training in high school and went to college to be a pilot. At that time, flight crews on the big planes like DC-10s and stuff had 3 flight crew. And there was concern in the industry that as those people retired, there was going to be a pilot shortage. Well, it turns out that Airbus started making large planes that only required 2 flight crew. So the attrition that they were expecting didn't happen. And it became obvious that that wasn't going to be a good career path. And so after 2 years of college, I did we'll call it a major. You change your major, which 90% of students do. And I went to a Bible college to become a pastor, which I did for 5 years. And it turns out that I was spending a large part of my day doing things I either didn't enjoy or I wasn't good at. And Sherry, I don't know what you would recommend. What ratio do you think you'd need to be happy in a job? There's going to be things that you just have to do, right? But is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? Where do you think that threshold is where you could be happy long-term in a position?
It's actually 80-20. So you should be utilizing about 80%, at least 80% of the skills you actually prefer. And if you're utilizing more than 20% of those you don't enjoy, you're going to get burned out and you're going to end up becoming a registered investment advisor. So good move.
Yes. So that was really a catalyst. So I stepped away from working in a church for a year. And during that time, I met my now wife. We got married and decided, what am I going to give working in a church another try, or am I going to do an actual career change? I'm almost 30 years old at this point. With a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and talking about a career change. So I went to business school full-time, getting a MBA in finance and statistics. And from there, ended up doing corporate finance for several years. But I fell in love with the markets during business school. And to get to finance and statistics was a bit of a journey, because I'm coming into a business program without a lot of base business knowledge. Now, my wife was incredibly instrumental because she was an accountant. and she worked at at the time there was big 5 accounting firms. And so she was able to accelerate my learning curve as I was learning accounting, learning finance, not only connecting the dots on the technical end of things, how to do debits and credits and such, but this is why it's important. This is what it looks like in the real world. And so when I had hooks like that to hang it on, that was helpful. But before I got there, did I want to do marketing? Did I want to do HR, IT, right? What direction to go? And something that I did that was incredibly instrumental was I started doing informational interviews. And I would sit down with somebody, I'd ask them, can I buy you a cup of coffee? And I want to hear about your career. How did you get here? What risk did you take? If you had it to do over again, what would you do differently? And basically, when you ask somebody, would you like to talk about yourself for an hour? Who's going to say no to that? And so that's what I would do. I would sit down with pen and paper and take notes for an hour and ask questions and then listen. And wow, some of the things that I got out of those cups of coffee were significant life lessons, really, and also, resources as well. I had somebody I could go to later to ask questions. You're an expert here. Can you push me in the right direction? And something else I did, I always finish my interviews with, is there anybody else that you think would be a good person for me to talk to? Oh, yeah, call my buddy Joe over at this company. I bet he'd love to sit down with you and do the same thing. And it kind of started snowballing. And over the course of 2 years, I did 50 informational interviews. And it became clear, okay, I'm not going to be good in this industry, but finance and accounting kept coming up. Well, I didn't want to compete with my wife. She's already an accountant. And so finance became the way to go. The interviews were so beneficial that I continued doing them even after I got into corporate. I wouldn't do them at the same frequency, but there would be people that I would sit down with, ask questions, and take notes. Sherry, we've had several lunches, so I'm sure I gleaned information from you. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but all those interviews that I did paid off later. So when I got my professional credential, which is a chartered market technician, when I completed that, I started doing podcast interviews for our professional organization. So all the guys that you see on CNBC, I would interview them. I would read their book ahead of time or something like that, and I'd interview them. Well, I'd done 100 of these with other people before. It was actually a really easy transition to just hit record and start asking questions, be quiet and listen, and make your guests look good. And so I did that for a few years, and it was incredibly beneficial from the standpoint of I ended up, in preparation for the interviews, I'd read things that I normally wouldn't read, but I knew I had this interview and I wanted to ask questions that would cater to the customer's strike zone, right? The person I was interviewing. And so it really broadened me out and gave me a broader base than I would have otherwise had. So it's one of those skills that's may not be intuitive, but it's beneficial. And I've even ingrained it in my oldest daughter, our oldest daughter. I have her do this with people even through high school. And one of my proud daddy moments was we were at a swim meet, and I was talking to one of the parents, and I'm like, you know what? My daughter's going to want to talk to you. I know she is. And so when she came up, I said, I'd like you to meet Dr. John Doe. He has a PhD in chemistry from Michigan. And she interrupted me, and she's like, I would like to interview you. I would like to buy you breakfast, and I would like to ask you 10 questions. Would you be willing to meet with me? I was so proud. I didn't have to. Oh, my gosh. So she was so excited to have access to somebody with that depth of experience in a field that she was incredibly interested in, and she sees the opportunity right away. Well, how do you think it made that guy feel? He was just like, yeah, of course I'll meet with you. Right. So they have coffee for an hour, and he was so impressed with her. He's like, you know what? Let's meet again. I'll take you to my lab. he's an inventor. I'll show you things she would have never gotten access to otherwise, right, just because she was prepared for the opportunity when it came.
Well, and also, Lance, because it occurred to you to introduce him to your daughter, because I know there have definitely been times, maybe this happened to me today, I'm so close to certain people that I don't necessarily see what I should. Does that make sense? So, I mean, if you had been really good friends with John Doe, you may not have even thought, oh, I should introduce him to Lexi because he's just John, right? And so I think oftentimes we don't even see the benefit that those people can have in our lives. And you saw it. And then Lexi, because you've conditioned her to think that way, she immediately knew, oh, wait, that sounded terrible that you conditioned her, but you taught her well and you were a great dad for a number of reasons. And so she just knew, oh yeah, I should have coffee or breakfast or whatever she had with him. That's fantastic. And to think about the number of young people who are trying to figure out what the heck they want to do. And the expectation is that they know what they want to do. They might be thinking, oh, maybe I want to do something in chemistry, but they've never been into a lab. And then they figure it out once they've gone through school and then all these things and then stay on that trajectory.
And I'll pick on Lexi again. She did this with somebody else who was a PhD student. And he said, you know what, why don't you come to my lab and spend the day and we'll do some fun experiments. And she got exposed to something that she was like, wow, I think I could see myself doing this every day. What do I have to do to go on this path? And that's what we encouraged her to do is, you know what, put on the scientist hat for a while and see if it fits. And right, why not? And until something changes. So yeah, she's a sophomore in college now as a chemistry major. So I don't know if she'll be one of the 10% that doesn't change their majors or if she will, but she is very bright and she's driven. So her bigger problems will be saying no to things because she has so many directions that she could go and be successful.
And I can't imagine the number of contacts she has now too in that field, and not just in that field, but those contacts have contacts in other fields. So if she does think, oh, I'm interested, she knows where to go. Right. That's fantastic. You should be proud of that daddy moment. That's fantastic.
I can only take so much credit, but I'm sure my kids will throw me under the bus in other ways.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they have already. You just don't know it, Lance. So, and how many of those people do you think that you've remained in contact with, and how has of the did you say 200? Did you say 200 coffee days that you had?
During business school, I did 50 within 2 years. And then I would, over the course of my career, I would do 1 or 2 a year after that. But during that period with the Chartered Market Technicians Association, I probably did about 25 interviews there. And that's an incredibly powerful list to have because I've been able to go back to those people and say, I'm thinking of one guy right now. I was working with market data for the last 100 years. So the Dow Jones goes back to 1896. Nobody knows, but the markets used to trade on Saturday. So it was Monday through Saturday trading. And then in the 1950s, as I recall, it went to Monday to Friday. But on Saturdays, that's when they settled all the trades. They'd go with their stock certificates and go, okay, you bought RCA, here you go. And so I was like, what am I supposed to do with Saturday data? It's messing up my charts. And I reached out to one of the guys who I knew had done this before. And turns out there's more than one answer to the question. But I had a resource to go to instead of just being stuck.
Right, and just Googling it.
A lot.
One thing that I love about you teaching Lexi this too is that I don't think it's just young people. I think all humans have gotten to the point where we're just so accustomed to Googling things to figure it out on our own, rather than actually considering, okay, what are some humans I could talk to about this?
So you're kind of taking me down a networking path. This isn't my strength. When I think networking, I think of a large room of people and you have to work the room. That is not me. I'm an introvert. And if I'm in a large group, I'm trying to figure out how to make it as small as possible. Where's a table of 6 instead of hundreds? That's how I function. And so that's why the informational interviews worked well. But I have one friend who actually had an intentional structure for networking. So, and she would categorize you. I knew what circle I was. I wasn't in the inner circle. I was on one of these outer circles, which means that she would reach out to me once or twice a year. Her inner circle, she was having a touch point with them quarterly. And, so the outer circle people, she would have a Christmas party where she'd have 50 people over and she'd get to talk to everybody for a few minutes, right? The reason she did that is during one of our recessions, she was unexpectedly laid off and she realized she had nobody to reach out to say, hey, I've been laid off. I'm looking for work. If you see something that makes you think of me, will you let me know? She didn't have that at all. And she said, I'm never going to let that happen again. Mm-hmm. And so she started intentionally building a network of people that she was able to leverage.
I love that you knew where you were relative to the inner circle too.
It wasn't offensive to me at all. I don't know. Should I be offended?
No, not at all. I just love that she shared that with you and had that conversation. And I'm sure you probably thought, yeah, you don't need to touch base with me quarterly. It's fine.
Right. Indeed.
Where do you think that if you had continued down the initial path you had gone down, how do you think your life would be now? Whether it was being a pilot, being a youth pastor, I mean, I know those are different, but how do you think things would be different now?
I often think about what being a pilot would look like. And I think I don't know, dodging a bullet isn't the right way to put it, but I don't think that would have been a good fit for me. I'm a homebody. I like being home, and a pilot is going to be gone 15, 16 days a month, I suppose. It's a hard life, and flying is not hard. It's boring. There's not a lot to do when you're going from A to B. There's takeoff and there's landing, and there's not a lot in between. The plane flies itself, and I've heard of pilots that bring a toothbrush with them and clean the instruments on the plane during the cruising time. And to me, that would just make for a long day. I would think of how much potential I have, and me and a toothbrush just, is that what I have to show for my day? And then, room service. I don't, it's not compelling to me at this point in my life. Mm-hmm. I was a good pilot. I just don't know if it was the right career path for me. So, it was probably good in hindsight.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like that too, that, I mean, you were a good pilot, but it didn't necessarily mean that's what you wanted to continue doing. You can be good at something and not necessarily enjoy it or enjoy the entire lifestyle it brings. It's not just flying the plane, but you thought about, okay, I don't actually want to be away from home that much. What else was I going to say about that? Oh, before we started too, we were talking a little bit about, I had not thought about this before, but we were just talking about, you were talking about as a pilot, what matters the most is how you respond when there's a risk or there's a concern of some sort, which is so aligned with being an investment advisor.
Yes, absolutely. It's uncanny how well being a pilot training prepared me for investing, because as a pilot, you're always thinking about what could go wrong, right? If my engine quits while I'm flying, there's no pulling over. You don't find a gas station. I mean, you are in the middle of it right now. So yes, I'm going to do my pre-flight checklist. I'm going to make sure I have fuel and oil and all of these things So you avoid an emergency like that. You always have alternate airports planned out ahead of time. So if there's a storm on your cross-country flight, right? It's these preparations that you hopefully you won't need these contingency plans, right? You hope you don't ever need to put them into practice. That's exactly how I view investing. I spend a crazy amount of time and money researching history. And here's a great example. From 1982 to about 2020 or so, the U.S. bond market had declining interest rates, which means you had rising prices. So people on Wall Street, they don't study history. They only know what they've experienced in their career. But we had the same thing happening for 40 years up until 2022 is the example I want to come to, because the stock market went down and the bond market went down at the same time. This is something that nobody on Wall Street had seen because it hadn't happened in a material way since the 1970s. So most people were just paralyzed. They didn't know what to do. And to have the bond market go down the way it did, some have said we haven't seen that in 150 years. So very unusual things were happening. But my best trades that year were betting on the bond market declining, something that we were told couldn't happen, not at least while the stock market was going down. So yeah, I had to dust off an old contingency plan, but I wasn't thinking about it for the first time, right? And so I find a lot of value in, so I'll pick on the 1970s again. I was a child. I don't remember much about the 70s except great music. I have a buddy who, Sherry, we worked with. He managed $30 billion when we worked together. He was managing institutional money in the 1970s. I can go to him. I had a call with him this morning, but I can go to him and say, I can study this chart. I can see what happened, but I don't know how that felt. Tell me what it felt like. What was the mood with you and the people that you worked with and the people on Wall Street when in 1973 and 74, the stock market declined while corporate earnings increased, the stock market declined like 50%. It was a huge detachment between fundamentals and what price was doing. And so he can tell me some of those stories. It's incredibly valuable to have experience that you can leverage, and it helps me think through things. Okay, what if that happened again? I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know what the next 10 years looks like. I have some ideas, but what I do is I say, if we have the 1970s again, where stocks go nowhere for 10 to 15 years, and we have runaway inflation and booming commodities, what would that look like in my portfolio and my client's portfolio today? And think through that. How would I implement that? That's sometimes a problem too. It works great in theory until you try to roll it out. Where could that stumble? So yeah, pilot and flight training was very helpful in just, framing how I approach the world from a evaluate risk first standpoint. And it might have been my age, because I was in high school. The principal at our school calls children wet cement. So their minds are still being formed, right? Yeah. But the things learned during these formative years are very permanent. And I think that was really helpful, that I was able to get good training during some of those formative years. I still did dumb stuff, but...
but not as much. You evaluated it first. Well, really though, Lance, the fact that you recognized that, really every path you've gone down, there has been some level of risk to it. And that's just, a lot of that has to do with how you're wired. And you are clearly, you have strengths that allow you to, you're drawn to that. And you have strengths that allow you to react appropriately and plan and do all these things. It's funny because when we were talking before this a little bit, when you were talking about being a soccer goalie, that makes me like physically like anxious. I just think, I mean, like in PE in elementary school, I remember dodgeball. When I think about dodgeball or if I think about ever being a goalie in PE in elementary school, I immediately feel that anxiety in my body, even thinking about it. So you're talking about being a goalie, which you were for a long time. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. There you're talking about a trade that you did. And again, I mean, just trading in general. And I get physically anxious. Thought of flying a plane, again, physically anxious. So I think each of those things seems completely different from the other, but you have that general transferable, those skills, and that just your nature allows you to do all of those things well.
Absolutely. And when you are a pilot, it's called PIC, pilot in command. You are in control of that plane. You make the decisions. If the tower tells you to do something and you believe it's going to hurt you, your plane, your passengers, you don't do it. At the end of the day, you are responsible. There's no passing the buck. With soccer goalie, same thing. You're the last line of defense, right? If 10 other guys let you down, it's just you and the other team. And you have to be decisive, and there's no excuses. Either you save it or you don't, and it shows up on the scoreboard right away. It's horrible. You have to be mentally strong. And I think sports are very good for life skills. And that's one that I really took away from it. This is a great story. I played soccer in college. In high school, I was a big fish, small pond situation. When I got to college, everybody was MVP on their high school team, right? So I actually didn't go out for the team. The soccer coach saw me playing in a PE class, and he said, "You need to come out for the team." And I'm like, "Of course I do." You need me. So I show up.
Obviously,
I show up for practice, and I worked really hard. Right, I was fourth string goalkeeper. I don't know why in the world he thought I needed to come out for the team. I was fourth string behind a senior, behind an All-American, and behind a guy from Uganda who was probably born with a soccer ball. Just amazing athletes. And so I show up, and I'm working hard trying to make an impression. And the other guys are going, "Coach, are you going to say anything to Lance?" It's like, nope. Day 2, I show up. Coach comes up to me and he said, "Lance, how do you feel today?" I'm like, "I feel great, Coach. Put me in." And he said, "You are a liar. Take off your shirt." And I took off my shirt, and I was all bruised from the prior day's practice. And he said, "Do you want to know how to do it right today?"
Oh my gosh.
So what a wise man to take a cocky, arrogant freshman who is still an MVP in his head and break him down to the point where he was willing to learn again in one day. He was so brilliant. I guess he had worked with a lot of arrogant people. I can't get over it. I'm like, what a great experience for me in hindsight and I had to learn to play my position all over again at a college level. But that's not unusual. I just didn't know it.
Right.
I didn't know what I didn't know.
You wanted to seem tenacious and that determined, all these things. And oh wow, that is an incredible story. And I mean, what did you say was it one of your teachers said? You're like, oh, the principal at the school, that students are like wet cement.
Wet cement.
You were still wet cement when you took your shirt off that day. Were you confused when he said, "I don't believe you"? Well, what did you think in that moment?
I had no idea what direction that conversation was going.
You want me to take off my shirt? What?
I know. Oh, shirts and skins. Okay, I guess I'm skins.
Were you even aware that you were bruised, or were you just accustomed to it as a soccer player?
Oh yeah, I knew. I knew. It's just the way it is. And what he was getting at was in high school, there's usually only a couple players on the team that are a serious threat, and you can isolate them. And my defense in high school could put them in a position to where they couldn't get a solid shot off, and I could easily save it. In college, everyone is a threat, a potential threat, and they could get much better, high quality, high power shots off at me. And I was blocking them with my body, but I was taking so much damage by doing it. You need to have a hands up, not a body like a football player might catch a ball. So there were small things to fix, but when you have that muscle memory for so many years of doing it the wrong way in high school, he knew that if I was that tender, I might keep my hands up on day 2.
That is brilliant. Oh, I love that.
But I love books on mental strength, mental toughness. You have to have it. You have to have a short memory. Nothing's going to be perfect. There's never, I think of the movie Ford versus Ferrari, and they talk about having the perfect lap, the race car drivers having the perfect lap. It's the exception, not the rule. Mm-hmm. So when things don't go perfectly, how are you going to respond to that? It can't define what you're doing, how you're doing it. You have to be comfortable with a passing grade, not an A+. And you just have to make sure it's not a failing situation. Right.
Well, and I love too that he was just pointing out that you just needed to make some adjustments. It didn't mean you were a bad soccer player. And your tenacity was obviously helpful, but he just wanted you to adjust a few things to do it the right way. Because I think a lot of times we go through life thinking, oh, if I'm just persistent enough, if I just work hard enough, I just need to have tenacity. But if we just tweak a few things, it makes it easier. Like, when you're playing soccer. So you can have all those things, which are important, but, just making adjustments and doing it the right way, working toward your strengths is really helpful.
That's true. Yeah, working with what you have is important too, instead of wishing for something else or something in addition. I'm working on something right now. I have a group of investment strategy people that we bounce ideas off of, and there's always a question of how do you know when a strategy is broken or underperforming, and what do you do about it? And so we're able to bounce these ideas off of each other, and most of us are quantitative people. We actually will go test our ideas, and without adding another, I'm giving you some of the gold. Over the last year, I've built 5 different models on how to turn strategies up and down based on how they're performing. I started out with one. I'm measuring how to get the most return per unit of risk. So the path of least resistance for return. And I built some where the math was beyond me. I want to be able to do something on the back of a napkin if I have to. And the math is too complex, even though it worked. And so after 5 iterations of this thing, I have a tool that will increase annual returns by roughly 5% just by knowing how much to turn things up and how much to turn things down, not adding or subtracting strategies at all. It's just what I already have and been using for years.
That's incredible. Okay, so when it comes to your business, obviously people know this about you, that you're an incredible advisor, and you are full, right? You don't even you're at capacity when it comes to clients, right?
I'm getting there.
You're getting there. Okay.
I'm getting there. I'm a one-man shop on purpose and intentionally, purposefully, because you and I have been in the large corporate environments, and we understand how the silos work. And it's, I don't want to spend my day managing people is a big thing. And part of that is just how I'm wired. So because I don't want to hire staff, I am limited on how many clients I can take, because at some point it would start to negatively impact the client experience.
Well, that's good that you recognize that about yourself too, because not only did you know you wanted to be an investment advisor, but you could have gone so many different paths with that. You could have stayed in that environment and climbed the ladder and eventually managed people, right? But you decided, nope, I want to have my own company and do it on my own. Because, again, back to how you're wired.
It cuts both ways. The grass is always greener, because sometimes corporate looks good when you have a bad day. I mean, everything is on your plate, or I try to outsource some things too, so I don't have to be the expert in everything. So compliance comes to mind. So I hire a compliance consultant where I can reach out and get guidance on things like that. So it frees me up to do the other things that I enjoy and I am good at, to get to your 80%, as you say.
But it doesn't have to be the corporate environment, or you do absolutely everything and you recognize that. You can just hire out the parts that you need, that you're not necessarily an expert in, nor do you want to be an expert in. That's fantastic. Okay, so let's see. Is there anything else that you wanted to share before I get to our last couple of questions here, Lance?
No, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So this is a question I actually asked you. So in 2021, everyone, I did a Facebook Live with Lance. So this is kind of a repeat of that. So same question that I asked you then. I'm curious to see if your answer is different. Not that I remember what your answer was, Lance, but what would you tell your younger self, knowing what you know now?
Oh, yeah. So that's such a loaded question, because everything we just talked about, it would have, if I would not have had those experiences, it would have changed who I am, right? That is a really hard question. I would probably just say don't quit. You just got to keep moving forward. Sounds like a Disney movie. Was that canned? Was that lame?
I feel like you should do something with that. Let it go? Is that? Well, it's interesting you said that, because there are things you quit, though, and it wasn't a bad thing that you quit. You had the wisdom to quit and try something else and then not quit that.
Right. Don't quit because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be. With investing, with markets, I come back to some core principles, and one of them is that people move markets and people don't change. So every time I hear somebody say, this time it's different, I'm suspect of that, because I don't care if AI takes over. It's it's still been programmed by man. And so that's what I lean back on. So when things get sideways, and they kind of are right now, we're in a really unique time in the markets, meaning it's hard. We haven't had an easy money environment for years, maybe 2017. Things really changed in 2018. And so, we have these things called crypto that have no value. What is it? It's just a string of code. It's a verification. It's worth how much? Bitcoin is worth how much? I don't understand. I feel like the guys in 1995 when Netscape.com went public, and they're like, the internet, that's a fad. We're not going to invest in that. They don't even have sales. They certainly don't have a robust business plan, right? And it changed the world. So we're in one of those phases right now with both computers, or the Apple IIe. It's really good.
It's just a phase.
No, with crypto, with AI, these are disruptive things. We don't know what they're going to look like in 10 years, 20 years, but they're probably not going away. We'll see. But yes, it's hard. Don't quit. Dig in. Keep learning. Don't coast.
And I love the fact, too, that you went back and talked to the individual who used to work at the company we were at and asked, what did it feel like? You asked about all the human stuff associated with the market, because it all boils down to humans. I mean, humans are the ones buying and selling. And even if there is AI and models and all of these things, I mean, you're considering the human component. You're not just Googling it and saying, hey, what should I do here?
And the word for that in my industry is called sentiment. Are people optimistic or are they pessimistic? Optimistic people tend to buy stocks and they overshoot what fair value is on the upside. And pessimistic people sell stocks, and they usually overshoot fair value on the downside. So we get these really big swings because human emotions are involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, one more question for you. Where can people find you? Do you want them to find you, Lance? I won't give them your home address.
I love helping people. The email is probably the fastest way to get a hold of me, and that's research@lexingtoncapitalllc.com. You can go to my website. It's the same, lexingtoncapitalllc.com, and that will just direct you back to my email. So
it's just a loop. Sorry, go ahead.
My technical skills capped out in 1995 with email. So.
And that was a struggle because you were just recovering or working through the Apple IIe thing, right? So
I'm so happy I came up with that. I was like, I'm talking about computers. I want to be talking about AI. Why did I say computers? You can edit it, right, Sherry?
Yeah, but I'm not going to. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, and I need you to share too, Lexington Capital. How did you come up with that name? I know, but can you share?
Yeah, it's a wink to my oldest daughter, Alexis. I like cars, so my dog's name was Beamer. My daughter's name was Alexis. I have a Beamer and a Lexus, and so we call her Lexi. And so when I was deciding to name the company, it was, do we do a wink to Lexi and call it Lexington Capital? Maybe she'll take the business over someday. Apparently, I didn't inspire her the way a chemistry lab did, but that's how we got there. The side note, the other option was, you know that we drill wells in Africa, and the first well we drilled was in a village called Zindove, and I'm like, Zindove Capital, that kind of speaks to where our heart is. Helping out people in Zimbabwe. And so my buddy who lives there, who's from there, he's like, well, Lance, you know that Zindove means cow poo, right? And I'm like, well, I didn't know that. He's like, well, it's actually a sign of wealth. If you have cow poo around, it's because you have a cow, which means you're wealthy. But the more I thought about it, cow poo capital, I just couldn't move forward with that. So then it became easy to just do Lexington Capital. But I have people from Kentucky going, I love your name.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm so glad you shared that. Oh, it is always so much fun talking to you, Lance. Thank you so much for sharing this. I suspect that you're really going to inspire a lot of people to have more conversations with other humans.
I hope so. Yeah. People matter.
People matter. Thank you so much for being here, Lance. And thank you everyone for listening today. Reach out to Lance if you have any questions. He loves to help people. And you just have such an inspiring story. I really appreciate you sharing it, Lance. All right. Thank you everyone for being here today. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for listening to the Dash Mindset Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player, tell your friends, and leave us a review. Follow me on my social media platforms highlighted in the show notes, and get in touch with me at thedashmindset.com. Share the topics you'd like me to explore in future episodes. Thanks again for listening to the Dash Mindset Podcast. We'll see you next time. Design and differentiate your Dash your way and make today amazing.